Hi, awesome fourth graders. Thank you for tuning in to another online edition of our Read Aloud Time. We are, of course, reading our cherished one and only Ivan novel. We were given rights for educational purposes by HarperCollins Publishing to use this book for an online read aloud. Thank you very much, HarperCollins. Where we left off was page 96, and we know that Ruby has arrived at the Big Top Mall. We know that Mac is hoping that she is someone who brings in people, and therefore he makes a lot of money from her. We know that since she's been there, she's really been the topic of conversation and been who and what everybody is talking about. We also know that Stella is pretty badly injured, and Mac is ignoring that right now because all he cares about is making money. Okay, we're going to find out if Ruby is someone who brings people to the Big Top Mall. Let's dive in and find out. We're on page 97. The chapter is called Children. Once I asked Stella if she'd ever had any babies. She shook her head. I never had the opportunity. Well, you would have been a great mother, I told her. Thank you, Ivan, Stella said, clearly pleased. I like to think so. Having young ones is a big responsibility. You have to teach them how to take mud baths, of course, and emphasize the importance of fiber in their diets. She looked away, contemplating. Elephants are excellent at contemplating. Contemplating is like thinking carefully about something. I think the hardest part of being a parent, Stella added, would be keeping your baby safe from harm, protecting them. Oh, the way silverbacks do in the jungle, I said. Exactly, Stella nodded. Well, you would have been good at protecting, too, I said confidently. Not so sure, Stella said, gazing at the iron bars surrounding her. I'm not sure at all. Okay, so she's recognizing and knowing that if she did have a baby, especially if she lived in a domain like they do now, she doesn't have much control at all, does she? She is locked up like everyone else. She would want to protect a baby, or perhaps want to protect Ruby, but how could she do that? Okay, page 99, the parking lot. Mac and George are chatting while George cleans one of my windows. George, Mac says, frowning, there's something wrong with the parking lot. George sighs. I'll take a look as soon as I'm done with this window. What's the problem? There are cars in it. That's what's wrong. Cars, George. Mac breaks into a grin. I think things are actually starting to pick up a bit. It's got to be the billboard. People see that baby elephant and they just have to stop and spend their hard-earned cash. I hope so, George says. We sure could use the business. Mac's right. I've noticed more visitors coming since he and George added the picture of Ruby to the sign. People crowd around Ruby and Stella's domain, oohing and eyeing at the sight of such a tiny elephant. I gaze out at the huge sign that makes humans stop and spend their hard-earned cash. I have to admit that the picture of Ruby is rather cute, even if she doesn't look like a real elephant. I wonder if Mac could add a little red hat and a curly tail to the picture of me. Maybe then more visitors would stop by my domain. I could use a few oohs and ahs myself. Ruby's story, page 101. Ivan, tell me another joke, please, Ruby begs after the 2 o'clock show. I think I may have run out of jokes, I admit. A story then, Ruby says. Aunt Stella's sleeping and there's nothing to do. I tap my chin, trying hard to think, but when I gaze up at the food court skylight, I'm mesmerized by the elephant-colored clouds galloping past. Ruby taps her foot impatiently. I know. I'll tell you a story, she says. A real, live, true one. Good idea, I say. What's it about? It's about me. Ruby lowers her voice. It's about me and how I fell into a hole, a big hole. Humans dug it. Bob pricks his ears and joins me by the window. That means like all of a sudden he tuned in. I always enjoy a good digging story, he says. Right, because dogs like to dig and hide bones. Page 102. It was a big hole full of water near a village. Ruby says. I don't know why humans made it. Well, sometimes you just need to dig for the sake of digging, Bob reflects. We were looking for food, Ruby says. My family and I, but I wandered off and got lost and went too close to the village. Ruby looks at me, eyes wide. I was so scared when I fell into the hole. Well, of course you were, I say. I would have been scared too. Me too, Bob admits, and I like holes. The hole was huge. Ruby pokes her trunk between the bars and makes a circle in the air. Guess what? She doesn't wait for the answer. The water was all the way up to my neck, and I was sure I was going to die. I shudder. Well, what happened then? I ask. I'll tell you what happened, Bob said darkly. They captured her, put her in a box, and shipped her off, and here she is. Just like they did with Stella. He pauses to scratch an ear. Humans. Rats have bigger hearts. Roaches have kinder souls. Flies have... No, Bob, Ruby interrupts. You're wrong. These humans helped me. When they saw I was trapped, they grabbed ropes and they made loops around my neck and my tummy. The whole entire village helped, even little kids and grandmas and grandpas. They all pulled and pulled and... Ruby stops. Her lashes are wet, and I know she must be remembering all the terrible feelings from that day. And they saved me. She finishes with a whisper. Bob blinks. They saved you? He repeats. Well, when I was finally out, everyone cheered, Ruby says. And the children fed me fruit, and all those humans led me back to my family. It took the whole day to find them. No way, Bob said, still doubtful. It's true, Ruby said. Every word. Well, of course it's true, I say. I've heard rescue stories like that before. It's Stella's voice. She sounds weary. Slowly, she makes her way over to Ruby. Humans can surprise you sometimes. An unpredictable species. Homo sapiens. Pause. So if you didn't know, Homo sapien is the species name for human being. So I'm a Homo sapien, you're a Homo sapien, okay? If you have 2 legs and you're a human, that's the fancy science way of saying human. It says that we are an unpredictable, word part un means not predictable species. That's pretty true if you think about it. For example, you might think you know someone really well, maybe a really good friend, and they could do something someday that is unpredictable, that surprises you. It doesn't have to be something bad, just something that really surprises you. Back to our reading, page 104. Bob still looks unconvinced. But Ruby's here now, he points out. If humans are so swell, who did that to her? I send Bob a grumpy look. Sometimes he doesn't know when to keep quiet. Ruby swallows. I'm afraid she's going to cry. But when she speaks, her voice is strong. Bad humans killed my family, and bad humans sent me here. But that day, in the hole, it was humans who saved me. Ruby leans her head on Stella's shoulder. Those humans were good. Doesn't make any sense, Bob says. I just don't understand them. I never will. You're not alone, I say, and I turn my gaze back to the racing gray clouds. Page 106, a hit. Stella's foot hurts too much for her to do any hard tricks for the 2:00 show. Instead, Mac pulls her, limping, into the ring where she tracks a circle in the sawdust. Ruby clings to her like a shadow. Ruby's eyes go wide when Snickers jumps on Stella's back and then leaps onto her head. At the 4:00 show, Stella can only get as far as the entrance of the ring. Ruby refuses to leave her side. At the 7:00 show, Stella stays in her domain. When Mac comes for Ruby, Stella whispers something in her ear. Ruby looks at her pleadingly, But after a moment, she follows Mac to the ring. Ruby stands alone. The bright lights make her blink. She flaps her ears. She makes her tiny trumpet sound. The humans stop eating their popcorn. They coo and they clap. So they loved her, right? You put that picture on page 107. Think about, remember we often say a picture is worth a million words. Think about what that picture is showing, that Ruby is feeling right there all by herself. Okay? Look at her facial expression. Look at her body language. Okay? That picture is trying to show you how she feels about being out there without Stella, and probably how she's feeling worried about Stella. Page 107, it says, they coo, they clap. Ruby is a hit. I don't know whether to be happy or sad. Okay. You could think for a moment what he might mean about that, right? Ruby's a hit. Stella is hurting so bad she cannot get out of her domain. She cannot perform, which we know that is going to make Mac angry, right? So he says he doesn't know whether to be happy or sad. I'm going to read next time to find out more about what he might mean by that statement. Okay, but you could right now think as a reader, why is he saying that? Okay. Thank you so much for reading with me today. I miss you all, send love and hugs, and look forward to seeing you soon.